Want to speak real English from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at EnglishClass101.com.
Hi everybody, my name is Alicia. In this lesson, we're going to look at 10 different ways to use the preposition by. I'm going to cover some of the most important and most common uses of this preposition, but of course there are some other uses such as phrasal verbs and idioms and so on. Today we're going to look at 10 very important and very great to know uses of this preposition. Let's get started. Okay. First, let's look at this one, number 1 here. This is the use of by to mean near or close, referring to its position from you. So, for example, he lives by the park. He lives by the park. In this sentence, we could replace by with near or close, and the sentence would remain the same. The meaning would remain the same. He lives near the park, or he lives close to the park. Same thing with our next example. My bag is by the door. My bag is by the door. So my bag is near the door, or my bag is close to the door. Last example, she put her coffee by the computer. She put her coffee by the computer. Again, this means near. She put her coffee near the computer. So all of these refer to by as meaning close to something else. Okay, let's move on to the second use. The second use is to describe the method of travel. So we use this by along with a way of getting somewhere, like a bus, an airplane, being on foot, and so on. Here are our examples. We went by bus. We went by bus. So by comes before the method of transportation. In this case, bus is our method. We went by bus. Second example, I've never traveled by train before. I've never traveled by train before. Again, by comes before the transportation type here. Okay? Last example, she's coming by car. She's coming by car. So again, we have car here, our method of transportation, and in front of that is by. She's coming by car. Please note the only time that we don't use this is when we're talking about traveling on our feet. When we talk about traveling on foot, we use the expression on foot. So it's about 10 minutes on foot. We don't say by foot or by walking, really. We say on foot. So this is a special exception to this one. If you're talking about buses, trains, cars, bicycles, and so on, you can use this by method. Okay, let's go on to number 3. Number 3 is also about a method, but it's a little more open. We use by to describe methods of doing things. So there are 2 kind of breakdowns that I want to talk about here. The first one is using by before an ing word. So this is a way of expressing the process of something. Let's look at some examples. First, turn on the car by pressing this button. Turn on the car by pressing this button. So in this situation, we have by before this ing word, by pressing. So this sentence is saying you can turn on the car if you do this action. So this part here is telling us the method of turning on the car. Turn on this car by pressing this button. Let's look at another example. Download the file by clicking this link. Download the file by clicking this link. So again, we have by, and next is an ing word, by clicking. So clicking is this motion on the computer or tapping on a smartphone. So download the file by clicking this link. This is another way to say you can download this file if you click this link. So we're talking about the method of doing an action. One more example of this. Make an appointment by calling our office. Make an appointment by calling our office. So again, we have by followed by an ing word. Make an appointment by calling our office. So we're talking about the manner or the method by which we can do this thing. Okay, so this is the first one that I wanted to talk about. The first way that we use this by to describe the method of doing something. We always do this with an ing word after by. There is a second type that I want to talk about, and we typically use this to talk about communication, methods of communication, and methods of making payments. So in this case, we follow by with a noun that's related to communication or a noun that's related to payments. So let's look at these examples. I have two examples I want to talk about here and a couple of notes for you. So first example, I'd like to pay by credit card. I'd like to pay by credit card. So in this situation, it's a payment situation, right? I'd like to pay by credit card. Here we have by, followed by the noun phrase credit card, okay? So this is a very common way to express I want to use my credit card. It's just a different way of saying I want to use my credit card. So here we have I'd like to pay by credit card. Okay, that's one type of payment. Maybe you have a debit card, for example. I'd like to pay by debit card. You might also hear people say I'd like to pay by check. It's possible you might hear that depending on the region, but we also, in this kind of case, we tend to use the word with a lot though. So for example, I'd like to pay with a credit card, or I'd like to pay with a check. We also use this when we're talking about cash. We do not use by when we want to pay with cash. We don't say I'd like to pay by cash. Totally incorrect. We often say I'd like to pay with cash, or I'd like to pay in cash. You might also hear no preposition. I'd like to pay cash for this, please. So these are all common ways of expressing payment, but we typically use by before a card type. I'd like to pay by card type, or maybe by bank transfer or wire transfer as well. Okay, let's look at the next one. The next one is a communication example. So when I say communication, I mean, for example, phone or fax or email or maybe online meeting and so on. So let's look at this example and then I'll talk a little bit about some other patterns that you might see here. So we sent the contract by express mail. We sent the contract by express mail. So in this situation, we're expressing a kind of communication, or in this case, transfer of information. We sent the contract by express mail. So express mail means physical mail, right? Express means fast, right? So we sent the contract by express mail. You might see this used to talk about the type of mail that was used to send something. So maybe in your country or in your region, there's like a basic kind of mail, express mail, maybe there's a special kind of super express mail, whatever. If it's important to express that kind of thing, like the level of mail, you can use by to do that. By is the most natural way to do that. However, in recent years, we use things like Skype or other online meeting things like Zoom, for example, but we don't really use by to express that. For example, if you want to talk about a meeting that you have on Skype or on Zoom, we generally don't use by to talk about that. We generally don't say, we're going to have the meeting by Zoom or we're going to have the meeting by Skype. We don't use by in these online situations. Instead, we typically use on. We're going to have the meeting on Skype, or we're going to have the meeting on Zoom. So please keep this one in mind. So this by tends to be used to talk about mail, physical mail. You might also see it used to talk about fax, like he sent it by fax. You may also see the word via, V-I-A, used in these cases. So as you can see, there are a few different ways that we can express communication, but I just want to point out that sometimes we do use by in these cases to talk about payments and to talk about communication. But generally, if you want to express the method of doing something, this is a really easy one to remember. By plus an ing verb. Okay, that was a lot of information. Let's go along to the next one then. The next one, number 4, is by used to express a deadline. So a deadline, that means the finish point for something. So let's look at our examples. Submit your application by Friday. Submit your application by Friday. This means Friday is the deadline, so you have until Friday to do this action, okay? The next example, call me by 3 p.m. Call me by 3 p.m. So by is before the deadline for something. So 1 p.m. is okay, 2 p.m. is okay, 3 p.m. is the last chance that you have. So by comes before our deadline, our stop point for the action. Last one, finish the proposal by next month. finish the proposal by next month. So all of these sentences mean that it's okay to do that action before the deadline. This by just marks the last possible point for something. A lot of learners ask about the difference between by and until, and I'm not going to talk about it in this lesson because there are a lot of differences, but I have a video about this, so definitely check out the by versus until video that I've made, and I hope that that will help answer your questions about those differences. Okay, let's move on to number 5. Number 5, we can use by when we want to express that we are doing something alone or that someone else is doing something alone. There's a very specific grammar point we need to keep in mind here. So let's look at these examples. First, she likes to go to the movies by herself. She likes to go to the movies by herself. So this by herself means alone, just one person. In this case, she. So she likes to go to the movies by herself. We use by before this word, herself, herself, okay? This is an example of what's called a reflexive pronoun. We're going to see this kind of pronoun in all of these example sentences, so you'll notice a pattern here. Let's look at the next one first, though. I ate lunch by myself today. I ate lunch by myself today. So I ate lunch by, again, myself. So we have this reflexive pronoun here after by. This sentence expresses I ate lunch alone today. It's just a different way to express that idea. One more example. My son got dressed by himself this morning. My son got dressed by himself this morning. So this is probably a sentence about a very, very young boy. So my son got dressed by himself. Again, reflexive pronoun. So when you want to use this by plus himself, herself, myself pattern, it always is used to express that something is happening alone. Someone is doing something alone. We will always use these reflexive pronouns to do that. So if you want to know more about reflexive pronouns, I also have a video about this topic that you can check out as well for more information. So in this example, I used herself, I've used myself and himself. We also have ourselves or themselves and so on to talk about more than one person, but in those cases, we're talking about doing something with just two people in these cases. So I hope that you check out that other video about reflexive pronouns if you want to know more about this, but this is how we use it together with by. Okay, on to the next one, number 6. Number 6 is a very simple use of by. We use by to talk about the author or the creator of something. So the creator of your favorite book, your favorite song, your favorite movie, your favorite piece of art, and so on. When you want to talk about the person who made it, you can use by to do that. For example, my favorite book was written by George Orwell. My favorite book was written by George Orwell. So by comes before the name of the person who created that thing, in this case a book. Second example, this film was directed by Christopher Nolan. This film was directed by Christopher Nolan. So we have by before the director's name, the movie director's name in this case, Christopher Nolan. So again, this is talking about the creator of a work or the director of a work. Okay, one more. Her favorite piece of music is by Beethoven. Her favorite piece of music is by Beethoven. In this case, we have just one name, Beethoven. So some artists, some creators are known by just one name, or maybe they have a performance name or something like that. If it's a very famous artist, like Beethoven, for example, most people just know it by one name, and that's okay. So we use by before the creator's name to talk about the person who made something. Okay, let's move along to number 7 then. Number 7 is to pass a location or to stop somewhere for a short time. We can use by to do both of these things. And you might think, well, how do I know which is which? How do I know if it means pass or stop somewhere? Generally, we can understand from the situation, from the context. So let's take a look at these examples. First, I drove by your house today. I drove by your house today. So here I have drove, past tense of drive a car, by your house today. In this case, it means I passed by your house today. So how do we know that it means passed and it doesn't mean stop? Well, probably if I'm telling the other person, hey, I drove by your house today, I probably didn't talk to that person, right? I'm letting them know, oh, I was in your neighborhood, I was in the area. So if I stopped at the house, I would have talked to the other person, right? They probably would already know. In this case, it means pass. I passed by your house today is another way to understand that. Okay, next one. Can you please stop by the supermarket? Can you please stop by the supermarket? So here we have by before the location. Can you please stop by the supermarket? So how do we know? Does this mean pass or does this mean stop somewhere? Well, our big hints are here. Stop. Can you please stop by, which means go very quickly to the supermarket. It would be very strange to say, can you please pass the supermarket, right? This sounds like a request. We probably would start a request for something with this expression, right? So this one means, can you please stop at the supermarket very quickly for something? Okay, last one. We walked by the library yesterday. We walked by the library yesterday. Here we have walked, again, past tense, by our location, by the library. We walked by the library yesterday. This sounds like it's probably passing. We walked past the library yesterday is how we understand this. So generally, based on the situation, we can understand if it means pass or if it means stop somewhere for a short period. Okay, we're almost done. Let's continue on to number 8 now. Number 8 is using by to talk about changes or differences with numbers. Let's take a look at these examples. First one, sales increased by 15% this year. Sales increased by 15% this year. This means that the total number of sales increased, so it went up. This by shows us how much of a change, okay? So one big question that people have is, is it to or is it by? What should I use here? Sales increased to 15% means that from some, like for example, 13% or 10% or something like that, the point that the sales reached was 15%. However, sales increased by 15% means the total change was 15%. So by and to communicate very different things. By is telling us the difference in change. To is talking about the point that was reached. So they are very different. Keep this one in mind. We tend to use this a lot with the verbs increase and decrease. Also just go up and go down. So we'll see that again in another example. So sales increased by 15% this year. That's the total change. Okay, next example. The temperature went down by 5 degrees. The temperature went down by 5 degrees. So that means the temperature decreased by 5 degrees. This means the total change was 5 degrees. For example, from 30 to 25, that's a 5-degree change, right? Again, if we say the temperature went down to 5 degrees, that means the end temperature was 5 degrees. So again, we cannot use to and by in the same way. By tells us the change or the amount of difference. Okay, last one. We missed our bus by 5 minutes. Oh, sorry, we missed our bus by 2 minutes. So this sentence is a little bit different here. So in this case, we're talking about like a change or a difference in schedule. For example, if the bus leaves at 12 o'clock, we arrive to catch the bus at 12:02, we can say we missed our bus by 2 minutes. So we can express this difference in time with by. So when you miss something or you're late for something, you can use by to do this. Like, oh my gosh, I was late for my plane by an hour. So we're expressing that difference in time with by. Okay, let's move on to number 9. Number 9 is using by.
Want to speed up your language learning? Take your very first lesson with us. You'll start speaking in minutes and master real conversations. Sign up for your free lifetime account. Just click the link in the description.